Your panoramic.
Make sure you show everybody.
She has to move to pan.
Franklin Roosevelt's closest advisor during much of his presidency was a man named Harry Hopkins. During World War II, when his influence with Roosevelt was at its peak, Hopkins held no official cabinet position. Moreover, Hopkins' closeness to Roosevelt caused many to regard him as a shadowy, sinister figure. As a result, he was major political liability to the president. A political foe once asked Roosevelt, "Why do you keep Hopkins so close to you? You surely realize that people distrust him and resent his influence." Roosevelt replied, "Someday you might well be sitting here where I am at, right now as President of the United States. And when you are, you'll be looking at that door over there and knowing that practically everybody who walks through it wants something from you. You'll learn what a lonely job this is, and you'll discover the need for somebody like Harry Hopkins, who asks for nothing except to serve." Winston Churchill rated Hopkins as one of the half-dozen most powerful men in the world in the early 1940s, and the sole source of Hopkins' power was his willingness to serve. And that's what I'd like to talk to you this evening about. Gene Wood wrote a book on 10 characteristics of being a turnaround leader. In other words, taking a church who's fallen apart and being that leader that God's called each and every one of us to be. And so I'd like to share with you very quick, over the next 5 minutes, these 10 characteristics. So Gene Wood suggests that leaders must take ownership, number one, in order to help churches become healthy. And this is accomplished through the first 3 principles. Number one, turnaround leaders consider leadership as an act of service. In other words, as the Bible teaches in Romans 12:1 and 2, that as we serve the Lord with our reasonable service, we serve the body. And so the Lord is calling us to serve the people that He's placed in front of us. Principle 2, Gene Wood states that leaders that are turnaround leaders accept responsibility from the turnaround. In other words, this responsibility means leading others to win the vision. And we have to partner as leaders. We need to invest in those men and women that God brings into our lives in order that they can have ownership with us. And then finally, in order for what Gene Wood says, that turnaround leaders avoid a church or other areas which does not desire to become healthy. In other words, we are called as leaders to invest in people who want to be invested in. We're not called to waste our time and our resources that God's entrusted to us on people and things that are not willing to change. Secondly, Gene Wood suggests that leaders, their approach must be bold, but yet be biblical. This is accomplished through principles 4 through 6.
You missed 3 times.
I didn't hear 3.
Turnaround leaders establish critical rules of engagement before they arrive. In other words, they have a set standard. They know what they believe and they stick to it. We cannot compromise our beliefs regardless of what other people say. And sometimes we might be the only person that believes. But as leaders, specifically turnaround leaders, we must understand these rules of engagement. Principle number 5 states that turnaround leaders builds to last, not backtrack. In other words, we go forward. We don't continue to have nostalgia and look what happened yesterday, but we look forward to tomorrow and the leadership and the vision that God's called us to. And then finally, turnaround leaders are action-oriented and bold. And sometimes you or I might be the only one that's bold, but when the Lord calls us to step in the gap, then He expects that. He expects us to be action-oriented. In other words, take the Bible and to press forward. And then finally, Gene Wood suggests that turnaround leaders never compromise their beliefs nor their standards. And this is accomplished through principles 7 through 10. Principle 7 states that turnaround leaders keep close reins on their tempers. In other words, we must know and continue to learn about our characteristics, the fruit of the Spirit. And so if we're slacking in a certain area, then we need to pray and ask the Lord. And we need to constantly be aware and be self-critical, because as leaders, we want to be open people. We want to be transparent. And specifically, we want to be self-transparent to those around us. Turnaround leaders are discreet about what they share with others. In other words, as leaders, we want to be careful who we share with, because some people will actually knock us down. And then the vision that God has for us will be so discouraged that we want no part of it. Principle 9 states that turnaround leaders are willing to confront the sin of the vision, and we need to break that. Where unity comes in amongst leaders is that as God is telling you and giving you that vision to move forward, then we need to be careful. And this goes along with what we talked about being careful who we share with what with. And then finally, turnaround leaders possess growth vision. And what Gene Wood is talking about, this growth vision, is that we have to understand what's going on tomorrow. And we do that by learning what happened yesterday. And so God is calling us to be forward. And so in conclusion, I'd like to share one thing. You, said the doctor to the patient, are in terrible shape. You've got to do something about it. First, tell your wife to cook more nutritious meals. Stop working like a dog. And also inform your wife you're going to make a budget and she has to stick to it. And have her keep the kids off your back so you can relax. Unless there are some changes like that in your life, you're probably going to die in a month. Doc, the patient said, this would sound more official coming from you. Could you please call my wife and give her those instructions? When the fellow got home, his wife rushed to him. I talked to your doctor, she wailed. Poor man, you only got 30 days to live. Thank you.